Hello, my fellow weirdos. It's like, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning, day after election. I am tired. I am so tired. Left about 4 in the morning, about 4:15 in the morning. Got home about 9 at night. Um, as far as Raspy goes, he seemed in a good mood. He was doing well this last night. For some reason, this morning he's not. Now it did rain all day, most of the day yesterday, off and on. I never got to see the day light, but every several hours they'd come through, voters, and I'd be like, "Is it raining still?" Or sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's just sprinkling." Other times people are like, "Oh, it's pouring." So, um, that was good for my seeds though that I had put in the other day because that helped tamp them down and get perfect. Um, but yeah, it could just be Raspy's not feeling so hot because, I mean, it's nice and it looks like the sun might break through. It's kind of cloudy, but it could just be not necessarily constipation as much as he's just hurting because I'll tell you what, my foot isn't hurting as bad and it's not near as swollen as I thought it would be. But I've been walking. I've noticed I've been walking differently because my foot every now and then shifts, and I start walking a little differently. And now it's putting the pain on my back, the small of my back, halfway up, instead of like on my foot. And I did notice my knees when I sat too long. My knees felt like they were starting to swell, and we'd switch off so I could just, or if there weren't much, any voters for us, because we had two precincts. We were in 32 and they were in 29. In fact, the fellow who gave me a ride home last time and this time is the fellow that works with the other precinct. Um, but he's a real nice guy too. Um, I think of the groups, he is the peppy one of them. Um, he's younger than me, but I think definitely in my group. In fact, of the four of the workers for us, I was the only female, and there was one female, an Indian gal, an older gal. She was very very quiet, and she didn't leave that area. She didn't come and talk to anybody really. Um, Several people, as I'm checking him in or something, they're like, "I like your hair." It wasn't just women; it was men and women. There was an older woman loved it. A couple of early teen girls were like, "I like your hair." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." I was like, "It's real." And one little girl, I was like, "Does it just look funny, or do you actually like it?" She says, "I like it." It's like, "You want to touch it? You can touch it." She's laughed. She was kind of giggling. Her mom was like, so, but I was definitely the peppy one, probably the younger one. I'm 62, but I'm not sure. I know two of them were older than me, but I'm not sure. But at any rate, we didn't have the problem voters, probably because it was a primary. And the person that I personally wanted to win out of the Democrats won. That was the person I voted for. If she happens to win the general over the Republican candidate, she will leave our federal. She's our representative to the federal Congress, the House. But we'd have to have a special vote to elect her, to elect somebody for that seat. And there's a pretty good chance that we will retain. I was wondering about that many weeks ago, and so I just decided to call up my state senators and reps and ask them. Tell them literally. I mean, I think Mikey Sherrill is a good choice. Um, First of all, a woman. Plain and simple. For a lot of reasons. And none of it is like, oh, revenge, huh? She's well qualified. Army veteran, copter pilot. Come on, people. Come on. That's why I chose her. That's one of the reasons why she won her seat to begin with. Because up to this point, she's not one of those to be like, I don't want to be primaried. It's like, I'm telling you what the correct thing to do, what the humane thing to do is, what the moral thing to do, what the correct way would be. And I'm telling you, that's the way I'm going. Y'all do what you want, the rest of you, but, that's the impression, and for the most part, her image is known as somebody who just doesn't fuck around. And if something, is askew, it wasn't a deliberate thing. It was I misspoke, or I didn't understand that, or something. It was an honest, confusion or mix-up or something. I can hang with that, because that's human. We all fuck up. I don't care who you are. But if you be like, oh yeah, I'm embarrassed as hell right now, guys. Thank you. I effed up. I am like so sorry. I am going to be aware of that in the future. Somebody who says it sincerely and straight up, like, I blew it. And I am totally embarrassed. After the fact, I'm like, what did I do? What did I just say? Come on, we've all had those days. You're secondary lashing out and you don't even realize it just because your level is like, no more. And an innocent person, just says, hey there. And you're like, it's not a great day. They're like, okay, I could deal with a person like that because they accept it and they try to learn and improve, to not be that way. And I've always found her to be that. So I personally am thrilled about that. I am personally not happy that Raspy's kind of acting weird. He was hesitant to eat and stuff, but again, if he's hurting, but he did. He ate. I put him on the bed finally, because he did come in, and as soon as he had a couple, some of the lickables, I wanted him to. I was hoping he'd sit up on the bed, and he didn't. He just kind of wandered, and I guess he's back in the living room, sleeping underneath the, on the base of the cat tree, but it's right by the door. So I don't know what the deal is. When he's not feeling well, he sits on the door mat right by the door. And he's not there. Lately, it's been moved over right next to it. So I'm a little, that's the only thing that's bumming the day for me, really. Like I said, my back is killing me. But that's okay, because whatever the tramadol doesn't take care of should be kicked in by now. The ibuprofen, I'll go take some of that. But it's not my foot. That's wonderful. My wrist and my back, different story. But that might be, like I said, the changing of the way I've walked. I have been noticing pressure in certain areas I didn't have before. But I am concerned about Raspy. I'm not going to get freaked out yet because I have what I need. Even if I've got to supplement things, if he eats it. But, I also wonder if, me being gone like 16 hours, you know what I mean? Might have just kind of thrown him off, because it did rain all day, most of the day. So, a few prayers for Rasp still would be helpful. But I'm not panicking or anything yet. Because his eyes were bright. He was like... and sleeping late that's not uncommon for older animals. When when he was 12, how old Smudgy is, he was just as feisty as she was. So she is. So just some good thoughts for Raspy's health. And again, she's walking around today yelling at me. I'm hoping it was just the fact that I was gone all day and like all night, mostly, or half the night, um, or all day into the night, shall we say. I'm just hoping that and the rain kind of just threw me off. The good news is I'm seeing little sprouts already. I'm like, ooh, 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 hello, little sprout. I know, I'm crazy. Oh, I don't know if you saw the video I did real quick the other day because it was election and everything. When my sister picked up my meds for me, that Walgreens screwed up and I couldn't get earlier in the day when I was out with my caseworker. And one of the things she gave me. Now I put them on these little markers, but it was like my little hand. She's like, oh my, how could that be? Oh, oh, oh. Is there something wrong with you, Judy? Yes. Yes, I'm still physically exhausted. I am tired. Very tired. Just your muscles, you know how it's just like how you after a really like a really intensive workout, like you're feeling good and you did extra and you really super pushed it on upper and lower, and the next day you're kind of like, oh, am I sure I didn't break something? Uh, 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 every time you move, it's like, oh gosh, oh god, don't sneeze, don't sneeze. Get the allergy meds, head. um, yeah, another a moment. I'm gonna have to fashion some sort of little thing with sleeves so it looks like, you know. Yeah, this is the way I get when I'm also when I've had too much alcohol or too much of a joint or something. This is the way. This is me when I'm exhausted or something. I'm just like a complete darko goo. But that's better than being violent and confrontational. I'm like, I either get really impassioned about a topic that I'm impassioned about, and the person's just like, man, you're harshing my buzz, you know? Or I get completely dorky goofy. It appears that the latter be dorky goofy is is the path this time on my exhaustion. And even at like they closed the poll at 8. Well, we have to pack everything up and but about the guy who no the other guy that worked there at the other district, he was like, you're still very, because I had said something like, you're so quiet. He goes, how? And he was like in his late 40s, I think. He goes, and still you are peppy. And I said, oh, believe me, I'm waning. I'm feeling it. But if I take the peppy and put her away, then I'm just going to feel it. So he goes, ah. And it was good just to not, you can't talk politics there. You could talk issues, but when it starts to get to side, where you're hinting at a candidate or something, you can't do any of that. So I didn't get any of that all day long. Seriously, stuff could have gone down, and we didn't know. You're not supposed to, be having that anywhere in the polling area. Oh, and we had a poll watcher. Most of the time, poll watchers, they come in. Sometimes they'll hang around for 20 minutes or whatever. Sometimes half hour or so, but I've never seen this guy was there 90% of the election. We had one guy that was a candidate coming around to the different polling places. I haven't seen that before where I'm happy personally be wherever polling place I happen to be working at, even in Arizona. I've never seen the candidate come around, and there was a lot more election officials popping in and out, so they were a lot more active. We did have some when we all got hooked up to ready to go. It was a couple minutes before 6, and there was already somebody, a businessman, in line waiting. He was the first one standing there, and our router was not working. It was one router for both districts, so both districts. And you need that because there are two e-readers and our two e-readers. That is where you sign and look everything up. They weren't online. And that also means you can't do any sign-ins. The machines, the voting booths were different because they're just electrical type of thing. That's all it is, and it tabulates inside each internally. And but with the router, you can't even sign people in. And at 6 o'clock, we're like, and finally one of the guys is like, I kept saying, maybe you should call because we're supposed to open it. He finally did because the router was packed in their stuff, so they're responsible for making the call. That's the way it is. Now they came out with a new thing. It was for if anybody needs like a handicap. It was basically a doorbell because for us, we're at the polling place. It's a community center. So you walk in, you have to walk all the way. If you park on the upper, you have to walk all the way down, come down, and come down that way to get to the voting room. And so if somebody needs assistance, they've got like a handicap, which I thought was very, especially since all that stuff is being attacked and taken out of existence, accessibility, type of stuff. And that was the first time it's ever been used, so nobody knew what to expect. The receiver is like, so they put like this thing with a kind of like a disabled look type of contraption. They took the box out, but they push the button, and like if somebody has a wheelchair and they really need some help, and we hear it in there, but we didn't know it was pre-programmed. It sounded like it's a freaking rooster, and the volume goes really loud, and so I was like, I just tested so we knew, because everybody was like, I've never heard what it sounds like. I'm like, well, they said doorbell, so I'm assuming. So I pressed it, and it was like, Rah! The hell? And it was like, I was just saying what it was. So eventually one of the other guys, came in, and the other guy was on the phone with them, with the text, because he talked him through it, and we got that working. There's a couple other things. In the last hour, one of my two printers messed up. The card printer messed up. It would not print. It would not. It kept printing the receipt from the other, but it wouldn't print the bat with the name on it. But that was fixed less than a minute. Um, but it was about 4 minutes or so after 6, and there was still nobody else. And he says, I figured I'd get in and get out before he gets here. I'm like, I am so sad. It wasn't even he wasn't even in our precinct. And so we could sit there and watch the Jekyll and, the comedy clown over there, they're trying to, because we would have been the same way. Stuck at the last minute. Oh, and the reason it was so late, that's what I was going to say. Right now, they don't have election officials bringing in any of the stuff that unlocks so you can get into stuff. You need the master. And the janitor had come and let us into the building perfectly before 5. It'll be open by 6. And we sat around for 25, 30 minutes. The cup didn't even get there. All we could do was bring the machines, and we didn't even know which machine number went to which district, because you can't just grab 2. There's certain machines to each district to make sure things are being kept. And so we just had them sitting there. We didn't even know to wheel it to which side. Till like 5:30. So they give you an hour to get everything set up, and we had to set it all up, and we only had 4 instead of 5 people in 30 minutes. And then we get it all set up. We actually get it all set up, but the router wasn't. What he told us, in case anybody works elections, what they finally figured out must have happened is they said, plug in that router, get those cords out, set that up for everything. Don't worry about plugging all the printers and, e-readers and all that in, because we have like 2 printers and an e-reader for each set person. And there's 2 check-ins on each district. So there's 4 of them. That's a lot of machinery. But what they said is, get that router plugged in first, because it's got to do some, it won't, the way they're set up is it's got to do some authentication processes by itself before it actually will start to, it takes a while. It has to boot things up, it has to verify, it has to check. I mean, there's all kinds of things they said. I think he said there's like a GPS. They're tracking where everything. And so it's not going to open up the Wi-Fi for all the stuff, and we kept having these little broken hearts or broken connection. And everything was plugged in fine, and our lights were all on. That's what was confusing us. But apparently they take a while to boot up. Normally we don't notice because you got shit done and you're plugging it in by 5:30 and you're just doing like the signage and stuff. So you don't realize that it's taking all that time. But because our stuff was half-hour delayed in us being able to access the stuff, it was there but we couldn't access it. Because basically what the cop brings is the key to the box that is all that you need, and the paper on what it. And I'm like, should we call the cops? When it was like 5:15, I'm like, should we let them? And the other guy's like, well, I really don't want to call the cops and be like, hurry up. I'm like, I see your point, but So the day started. Like I said, it was kind of like, well, it's their problem. So we had the handicap thing. So anything that was going on that was our problem. We had to deal with something. Anything. One of the guys finally took the bell, went out there, and stood out there from the elections, and he stood out there pressing each one. He was like, it goes through. There's songs. There's all kinds. He says, but he just put it on a normal ding dong. And it mattered because like the last hour and a half, for some reason that door kept locking outside, and they had to keep getting maintenance. They had to keep getting maintenance, and the only way anybody knew something had gotten flipped or something. So every time it closed, it actually locked. The doorbell. The first time. The first time those doorbells were ever used as, um, if you have disability, if you need some help in the parking lot getting in. First time they're being used. And it was the first time that that ever happened with that door. That it just was got into the self lock mode. That we don't know what happened. And they just was like, and when we heard the doorbell, I guess there was like 8 people, like a few people, couples. And they said, yeah, it's like we couldn't open the door. We knew there was voting, so we thought, well, push that. I mean, we do need help. How fucking cool is that? How fucking cool is that? Right? So, oh, and then the bathroom in the upstairs, remember, it's a community center. Upstairs bathroom was closed for like an hour because I guess of the pipe bursters. So people had to go downstairs to go to the bathroom. And the poll watchers there the whole fucking time for most of this. Not for the router at the very beginning, but I don't know, were we just entertaining the poll work, or like all the other polling places so fucking boring? Or did they just have a lot of challengers that were just camped out in one? That was odd too. And the few times that he'd be gone for maybe half hour or something, when he happened to notice, I'd be like, that's not typical, is it? He goes, no. I said, in fact, there's times you go through an entire election and a poll watcher never shows up, or a challenger, or never shows up at all to your polling place. And not only to say, it's like, you might as well just fucking put a tent and a little kerosene stove. He was there nearly the entire election. We're open from 6 in the morning till 8 at night on election day, people. He showed up mid-morning and he fucking almost never left. It was just a little, not like completely that's weird. Like before, we had a few mail-ins that they didn't vote them. But not like that last election was like, it just felt really weird. I made a video that night. It felt really weird. It was a lot of, but this was just malfunction. And one of their things wouldn't print. The one printer worked, but the other one didn't for that. He had the opposite problem. He printed the ballot card, but the other printer for the receipt we needed to make sure they were safe wasn't printing. As far as electronic stuff, it was more than normal things that happened, but everything was, I mean, we got things resolved each time relatively within 10 or 15 minutes or less. Usually it was 5 or 10 minutes. We only had one upset voter because they had to go to the other place. We had a few people because it's a primary. If it's a primary, you only are voting for who you want to run to in your party. The general. The general is the actual who wins it. Party against party. For the primary, you're just picking who you want to fight for your party. Who you want to, win from your party to go up and for the race. And I think there was 440, something like that, and the 60 over 6 is for the Republicans. The Democrats, there was way more Democratic registered that voted. Also, it wasn't super busy, but primaries often are not. People are like, whatever, I don't care. But when it's time to say, at a general, okay, when you're actually which party is going to win, And people say, "Well, what happened? So and so was in the race. How come he didn't win?" Did you vote in the primary? No. Well, then maybe that's why your guy you wanted to run didn't win it, huh? Then they realize that it's important, as just as important as a general election. So a lot of people don't. So it was like, okay, the numbers being really low is not unusual. Like in the hundreds instead of like the 800s, you know. But then we found out that 50% of the registered voters had already early voted. Half the registered voters, almost half of them, had already voted before yesterday, before election day. So you only needed half your population for a complete 100% to even turn out. So that was encouraging. More people are actually paying attention to the primaries. That's a good thing. The person that I expected on the left, on the right, I did win. And I am very pleased that the one that I thought, oh God, my back is killing me, won. So, for anybody that doesn't know how they kind of work, there's a very rough sketch of the way they start, but they are important. I'm gonna go take some ibuprofen, and I'll bet you that's partly what Raspy's problem is. It was very rainy yesterday, and he's an old guy, just like I'm an old woman. But it was nice to know that with the people about my peers, my age, give or take 10 years, weren't nearly as peppy and energetic as me. Now, my walking around was not necessarily super, peppy. My body is still an old woman. Older woman, okay? But my spirit, it kept up the entire time. I was like, okay, making jokes or something like that. And people responded positively. And a lot of people recognized me and they came right to me like, you, but your hair is different. I'm like, yeah. And they laughed. A lot of the women I got to laugh from the other precinct. A lot of people don't know because we have two, like I said, two precincts, 29 and 32, working in the same polling place. Everything's kept separate, but we're right next to each other. Because they'll come to me, I'm like, I can't do it because I'm a different precinct. There's only those two, sorry. But I was like, then they would say, I never can remember which one it is. And I'm like, I used to be the same way. But I'll help you never forget. And I'll go, honey, you're District 29. You're always 29. And she's like, I like that. She goes, I'm going to remember that. Now that I will remember that. And for people in my group, in my district, I would say, yeah, you know how they say always 29? You still need something to learn. You're always 32. 32 is a very good age. I said, darling, you're 32 forever. And she'd be like, I'm going to remember that. I said it to the men too. I was like, hey, after 32, you're always 32. Every birthday. Remember that. And they were like, oh my God, I remember that. There was one young boy, he was probably about up to his mom's, hip type of, and he was very observant watching everybody. And he looked at me when I was talking to his mom, and I said, you're never older than 32. You don't get any older. You're not an older woman. And I said to her, I was like, remind her, Mom, you're just 32. And he got, how they hide their head. And she kind of laughed. But yeah, I'm trying to make voting a good experience instead of like, oh, just a lamb being led to slaughter. You know, the way people treat jury duty. Now, of course, I wouldn't be this way serving in jury duty because that's not a joke. I mean, that's a crime being talked about. Um, but there's no reason why, you know, politics and elections and such have to be like, oh my God, I'm doing this because that's my job as a citizen. You know, it's going to be like, I'm going to go vote and try to have a voice in this again. I might get a laugh too. What's wrong with that? That's not disrespecting anything. That's just taking just taking 2 steps to the left, 2 steps to the right, just moving your perspective viewpoint. Oh, hello, Raspy. Sometimes that makes a huge difference. So, with that, I was going to cut off, and Raspy has impeccable timing. Mwah. Good, good timing, my buddy. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace out, guys.